Part 1. The spacecraft descended slowly, its thrusters glowing faintly against the dark expanse of the moon's surface. Inside, Alex Carter leaned forward in his seat, his gloved hands gripping the armrests tightly. His heart raced as he stared out the small viewport at the endless gray landscape below. It was his first time on the moon, and despite months of training, nothing could have prepared him for the sheer vastness of it all. The silence outside felt almost oppressive, like a weight pressing down on him, even through the thick walls of the ship beside him. Rachel Myers adjusted her headset and checked the readings on her tablet one last time. She was calm, focused, and completely unbothered by the enormity of their mission. Her blonde hair was tied back neatly under her helmet, and her blue eyes scanned the data with practiced precision. "We're good to go," she said finally, her voice steady over the comm system. "Just follow protocol, Alex. We've trained for this." Alex nodded but didn't reply. He couldn't shake the feeling that something about this mission wasn't quite right. Sure, they had been sent to study strange energy anomalies detected beneath the lunar surface, a discovery that had baffled scientists back on Earth, but there was more to it than just science. Something about the way the higher-ups had briefed them made him uneasy. They hadn't shared everything. He knew it. But now wasn't the time to dwell on those thoughts. Now was the time to focus. The landing was smooth, though the impact still jolted Alex slightly in his seat. As soon as the dust settled around the craft, the hatch hissed open, revealing the desolate beauty of the moon's surface. Alex took a deep breath, or as deep a breath as his oxygen tank would allow, and stepped out onto the ladder leading down to the ground. One hand gripped the railing firmly, while the other held a handheld scanner, already pinging softly with readings from the surrounding area. Rachel followed close behind, her boots crunching lightly against the fine layer of regolith. "This is incredible," she murmured, looking around. The horizon stretched endlessly in every direction, dotted only by craters and jagged rocks. Above them, the earth hung like a pale blue marble in the black sky, its presence both comforting and surreal. For a moment, neither of them spoke, simply taking in the alien world around them. Their base camp was a short distance away, set up weeks earlier by an automated rover. It consisted of a series of inflatable domes connected by narrow tunnels, designed to provide shelter and life support during their stay. Everything was powered by solar panels mounted on the outer edges of the structure, glinting faintly in the dim sunlight reflected off Earth. Once inside, Alex and Rachel suited up in lighter gear, trading their bulky spacesuits for simpler uniforms better suited for working indoors. Over the next few days, they began their work in earnest. Their primary objective was to investigate the source of the mysterious energy signals emanating from deep within the moon's crust. Initial scans suggested the anomalies were located several kilometers below the surface. It's far too deep for conventional drilling equipment to reach. Instead, they relied on advanced seismic sensors and thermal imaging devices to map the subsurface. Terrain, it was slow, painstaking work, but Alex found himself oddly fascinated by it. There was something thrilling about peeling back the layers of the unknown, uncovering secrets hidden beneath millions of years of geological history. Each new reading brought fresh questions, each discovery sparking new theories. Yet no matter how much progress they made, the true nature of the anomalies remained elusive. Then, on the fourth day, something changed. Rachel was analyzing a set of thermal images when she noticed something unusual, faint heat signature buried deep within one of the larger cavern systems. At first, she thought it might be a glitch in the equipment, or perhaps residual energy from volcanic activity long since dormant. But as she zoomed in closer, she realized the pattern was too regular, too deliberate to be natural. "Alex," she called out, her tone sharp with excitement. "You need to see this." He hurried over, leaning in to examine the screen. The image showed what appeared to be a network of tunnels branching off into the darkness, their walls glowing faintly with an otherworldly light. "What do you think?" Rachel asked, her eyes wide with curiosity. "Could it be artificial?" Alex frowned, studying the patterns carefully. "It's possible," he admitted after a moment. "But we won't know for sure until we get down there." They spent the rest of the day preparing for the expedition. The journey to the cavern entrance required navigating treacherous terrain, so they loaded their rover with supplies and equipment, including portable lighting rigs and reinforced climbing gear. By the time they set out, the sunlit side of the moon had begun to fade, casting long shadows across the landscape. The temperature dropped rapidly. The cold seeped through even their insulated suits. When they finally reached the mouth of the cavern, Alex felt a shiver run down his spine, not from the chill, but from anticipation. The opening was massive, easily large enough to drive the rover through, and it disappeared into the darkness beyond, like the maw of some ancient beast. Rachel turned on her headlamp, illuminating the jagged walls and rocky floor. Dust motes swirled lazily in the beam of light, giving the air an almost ethereal quality as they ventured deeper. The atmosphere grew heavier, charged with an inexplicable sense of foreboding. Every sound, the crunch of gravel underfoot, the creak of shifting rocks, seemed amplified in the oppressive silence. Yet despite the unease gnawing at the edges of his mind, Alex pressed on, driven by a mix of curiosity and determination. And then, just as they rounded a bend in the tunnel, they saw it. A faint glow pulsed rhythmically in the distance, casting eerie shadows across the walls. It was unlike anything either of them had ever seen before, soft, warm, and alive in a way that defied explanation. Alex exchanged a glance with Rachel, their expressions mirroring equal parts awe and apprehension. Whatever this was, it was clearly not of human origin. Without speaking, they moved closer, their footsteps cautious but deliberate. The light grew brighter as they approached, revealing intricate carvings etched into the stone around them. Symbols and patterns spiraled across the walls, their meaning lost to time but unmistakably purposeful. Alex reached out instinctively, brushing his fingers against the nearest carving. It felt smooth, almost polished, as if countless hands had traced its surface over millennia. Rachel snapped photos furiously, her camera clicking rapidly in the quiet. "Do you think these are messages?" she whispered, her voice barely audible over the hum of their equipment. "Maybe," Alex replied, his gaze fixed on the glowing source ahead, or warnings. They continued forward until they reached the heart of the chamber. What they found there stopped them dead in their tracks. In the center of the room stood rows upon rows of crystalline structures, containing what appeared to be some kind of organism suspended in stasis. Their forms were humanoid, yet distinctly alien, with elongated limbs and translucent skin that shimmered faintly in the light. Tubes and wires connected the pods to the walls, feeding them a steady stream of energy, or trying to, at least. Many of the connections seemed frayed or broken, leaving the creatures inside frail and emaciated. For a long moment, neither Alex nor Rachel could speak. The sight was both beautiful and heartbreaking, a testament to a civilization struggling to survive against impossible odds. Finally, Rachel broke the silence. "These aren't machines," she said softly. "They're alive." Alex nodded, his throat tight with emotion. "And they're dying." The realization hit him like a punch to the gut. These beings weren't relics of the past. They were survivors of some catastrophic event, clinging to existence in the only way they knew how. And now, after who knows how many centuries, fate had brought to humans stumbling into their sanctuary. Whether it was coincidence or destiny, Alex didn't know. All he knew was that they couldn't turn away, not now, not when they might be the only ones who could help. "We need to figure out what happened here," Alex said finally, his voice firm despite the weight of the moment. "If we can understand their technology, maybe we can find a way to save them." Rachel nodded, her resolve matching his own. Together, they began documenting everything they could, knowing full well that the answers they sought wouldn't come easily. But as they worked, a single thought echoed in Alex's mind. Humanity had crossed paths with something extraordinary, and the choices they made next would ripple far beyond the confines of this lonely moon. Part 2. The cavern was vast, its ceiling disappearing into shadows that even their powerful headlamps couldn't penetrate. The air inside felt still, almost unnatural, as if the very atmosphere had been drained of life long ago. Alex and Rachel moved cautiously among the rows of crystalline pods, their boots crunching softly against the rocky floor. Each step echoed faintly, a reminder of how isolated they were from the rest of the universe. Despite the eerie silence, there was an undeniable sense of urgency driving them forward. As they examined the pods more closely, Alex noticed something peculiar. The carvings on the walls weren't random designs. They formed patterns that seemed to repeat in cycles. Some symbols resembled stars, others looked like waves or spirals, but all of them radiated a strange kind of symmetry. "These aren't just decorations," he said aloud, running his gloved fingers over one of the markings. "They're instructions or maybe warnings." Rachel nodded, her camera clicking steadily as she documented every detail. She paused for a moment, tilting her head slightly as if listening to something only she could hear. Then she pointed to a section of the wall where the carvings appeared fresher, less worn by time. "Look at this," she said, her voice tinged with excitement. "It's different from the others. These symbols are sharper, like they were added later." Alex stepped closer, squinting at the markings. They were indeed distinct, more angular, more deliberate. Something about them sent a shiver down his spine. He pulled out his tablet and began cross-referencing the symbols with the database of alien languages compiled by researchers back on Earth. It wasn't long before he found a partial match. "This part here, it translates roughly to eternal night," he murmured, tapping the screen. "And these other symbols, I think. They're describing some kind of collapse." Rachel frowned, lowering her camera. "Collapse? Like what happened to their civilization?" "Could be," Alex replied, his tone grim. "If this is talking about losing their light and heat sources, it might explain why these creatures are in stasis. Maybe whatever caused the eternal night wiped out most of their population, and the survivors had no choice but to hibernate until conditions improved." "But conditions haven't improved," Rachel pointed out, gesturing to the fragile forms trapped within the pods. "They're still dying. Whatever energy they're getting now isn't enough to sustain them." Alex didn't respond immediately. Instead, he turned his attention back to the glowing source at the center of the chamber. It pulsed rhythmically, casting shifting shadows across the walls. The light itself seemed alive, flickering and dimming unpredictably. He approached it cautiously, his scanner humming as it analyzed the energy signature. What he saw made his stomach churn. "It's failing," he said finally, his voice barely above a whisper. "Whatever system powers these pods, it's breaking down. If we don't do something soon, these beings won't last much longer." Rachel joined him, her expression troubled. "Do you think we can repair it? Or at least stabilize it temporarily?" "I don't know," Alex admitted. "Their technology is way beyond anything we've dealt with before. Even if we figure out how it works, there's no guarantee we'll have the tools to fix it." Before Rachel could reply, a sudden movement caught her eye. She froze, her headlamp sweeping across the edges of the cavern. At first, she thought it was just a trick of the light, shadow stretching unnaturally as the glow from the central source shifted. But then she saw it again. A flicker, almost imperceptible. Near the farthest corner of the room. "Alex," she whispered, her voice tense. "Did you see that?" He followed her gaze, his hand instinctively reaching for the utility belt strapped to his waist. The beam of his headlamp cut through the darkness, illuminating jagged rocks and empty spaces, but nothing that moved. For a moment, he wondered if Rachel's exhaustion was playing tricks on her mind. They'd been working non-stop for hours, after all. But then he saw it too. A shape darted between two of the crystalline pods, vanishing into the shadows before either of them could react. It was fast to make out any details, but unmistakably alive. Alex's heart pounded in his chest as he scanned the area, searching for any sign of what they had just witnessed. "Stay close," he muttered, his voice tight with unease. "What was that?" Rachel asked, her breath quickening. She clutched her camera tightly, as if it might somehow protect her. "I don't know," Alex replied, his eyes scanning the darkness. "But I don't think it's friendly." The temperature in the cavern seemed to drop suddenly, sending a chill through Alex's suit. He glanced at the thermal readings on his wrist monitor and saw that the ambient temperature was plummeting rapidly. "Something's wrong," he said, frowning. "Shouldn't be happening." Rachel checked her own equipment, confirming what Alex had already suspected. "The energy levels are dropping," she said, her voice tinged with alarm. "Whatever's powering this place is destabilizing." As if in response, the glowing source at the center of the chamber flickered violently, plunging the cavern into near-total darkness. For a brief, terrifying moment, the only illumination came from their headlamps, casting narrow cones of light into the oppressive blackness. Then, slowly, the glow returned, but it was weaker now, barely holding back the encroaching shadows, and that's when they heard it. A low, guttural sound echoed through the cavern, reverberating off the walls and sending shivers down their spines. It wasn't human or even animal-like. It was something else entirely, a noise that seemed to resonate deep within their bones. Rachel instinctively stepped closer to Alex, her hand brushing against his arm. Neither of them spoke. They didn't need to. The message was clear. Whatever was out there, it knew they were intruding. "Let's get out of here," Alex said finally, his voice firm despite the fear gnawing at him. "We've got enough data for now. We can analyze it back at the base." Rachel nodded, though her eyes remained fixed on the shadows. "Agreed, but we should mark our path. I don't want to get lost in this maze." Using a small device attached to his belt, Alex deployed a series of glowing markers along the ground, creating a trail they could follow back to the entrance. As they retraced their steps, the feeling of being watched grew stronger with each passing second. Every flicker of movement, every creak of shifting rock, set their nerves on edge. Yet despite the tension, they pressed on, determined to escape the suffocating grip of the cavern. When they finally emerged into the open air, the relief was palpable. The cold bite of the lunar surface felt almost welcoming compared to the oppressive atmosphere of the cave. Alex took a deep breath, savoring the sensation of unfiltered oxygen flowing into his lungs, even if it was recycled from his tank. Rachel leaned against the rover, her hands trembling slightly as she reviewed the photos she'd taken. "We need to tell the others," she said after a moment, her voice steady, despite the adrenaline still coursing through her veins. "Deserve to know what we found." Alex nodded, though his thoughts were racing. He knew the implications of their discovery extended far beyond their team. If the aliens were truly on the brink of extinction, humanity would face difficult questions about whether and how to intervene. Could they risk diverting resources to save another species when Earth itself was struggling with its own challenges? And what if helping the aliens came at a cost they couldn't foresee? For now, though, those questions would have to wait. Their immediate priority was figuring out exactly what or who they had encountered in the depths of the cavern. Whatever it was, it hadn't attacked them, but that didn't mean it posed no threat. Till they understood more, caution was their best defense. Back at the base camp, Alex and Rachel uploaded their findings to the shared server, ensuring the rest of the team could review the data. While Rachel prepared a detailed report, Alex sat at the table, staring at the images of the crystalline pods. The faces of the alien beings haunted him not because they were grotesque or frightening, but because they were so profoundly vulnerable. In their frozen state, they seemed almost childlike, innocent victims of circumstances far beyond their control. Daniel Hayes, one of their colleagues, entered the dome just as Alex was scrolling through the photos. Tall and broad-shouldered, Daniel had a nonsense demeanor that often clashed with Alex's more idealistic approach. He glanced at the screen, his brow furrowing. "What's this?" he asked, pulling up a chair. "Evidence of intelligent life," Alex replied, without looking up. "Alive, but barely hanging on." Daniel studied the images for a moment, his expression unreadable. "You think we should help them?" "It's not that simple," Alex admitted. "Save them, shouldn't we try?" Daniel didn't answer right away. Instead, he leaned back in his chair, his arms crossed over his chest. "We don't even know what we're dealing with," he said finally. "For all we know, those things could be dangerous. But if waking them up puts us at risk, exploration doesn't mean recklessness," Daniel shot back. "We have a responsibility to Earth, too. If helping them means putting our own survival in jeopardy, then maybe we need to rethink our priorities. Alex opened his mouth to argue but stopped himself. Deep down, he knew Daniel had a point. The stakes were high, and the potential consequences of their actions were impossible to predict. But abandoning the aliens to die in the dark felt equally unacceptable. There had to be. Part 3. The next morning, Alex woke up earlier than usual. He lay in his bunk for a while, staring at the ceiling of the dome, replaying the events of the previous day in his mind. The alien beings trapped in their crystalline pods haunted him, their fragile forms suspended in stasis, their fate hanging by a thread. He couldn't shake the sense of responsibility that had settled over him like a heavy blanket. These creatures weren't just relics of some forgotten past. They were survivors, clinging to life against impossible odds. And now humanity stood at a crossroads. Rachel was already awake when Alex entered the main chamber of the base camp. She sat at the table, sipping coffee from a thermos and scrolling through the data they had collected. Her face was pale, dark circles under her eyes, betraying her lack of sleep. "You look like you didn't rest much," she said without looking up, her tone light but tinged with concern. "Neither did you," Alex replied, pouring himself a cup of coffee. The liquid was lukewarm, but he drank it anyway, grateful for the caffeine. "I kept thinking about them, about what we saw." Rachel nodded, setting down her tablet. "Me too. It's hard not to. What do you think we should do?" Alex hesitated, weighing his words carefully. "Can't just leave them there. Not if there's a chance we can help." "But helping them isn't going to be easy," Rachel pointed out. "Their technology is far beyond anything we've encountered before. Even if we figure out how it works, repairing it might require resources we don't have." "I know," Alex admitted, "but doing nothing feels wrong. Like we're turning our backs on something important." Rachel sighed, leaning back in her chair. "I agree with you. It does feel wrong, but we also need to think about the risks. Daniel's right about one thing. We don't know enough about these beings yet. What if waking them up causes more harm than good?" Alex set his cup down, his frustration bubbling to the surface. "So we sit here and do nothing? Let them die because we're scared of making a mistake?" "No," Rachel said firmly. "That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying we need to be smart about this. Rushing in without a plan could make things worse for them and for us." Her words struck a chord with Alex. As much as he wanted to act immediately, he knew she was right. He needed a strategy, a way to approach the problem methodically, minimizing the risks while maximizing the chances of success. Oh, but time wasn't on their side. Every second they delayed, the alien beings grew weaker, their lifelines fraying further. Later that morning, the team gathered in the main dome to discuss their options. The atmosphere was tense, with everyone voicing their opinions passionately. Daniel argued against any intervention, citing the potential dangers of meddling with an unknown species. Emily Dawson, another member of the crew, suggested running simulations to predict possible outcomes, though she admitted the available data was limited. Others floated ideas ranging from contacting Earth for guidance to attempting a controlled reactivation of the pods throughout the debate. Alex remained quiet, listening intently as each person spoke. When the conversation began to wind down, he finally broke his silence. "I understand everyone's concerns," he said, his voice calm but resolute. "But we can't ignore the fact that these beings are dying. If we wait too long, there won't be anything left to save. I propose we focus on stabilizing their environment, first finding a way to provide them with the energy they need to survive. Once we've done that, we can figure out the next steps." His suggestions seemed to strike a balance between caution and action, earning nods of agreement from several members of the team. Even Daniel reluctantly conceded that stabilizing the situation might be worth pursuing as long as they proceeded carefully, with the group aligned on a general course of action. Alex and Rachel got to work devising a plan. The first step was to analyze the energy source powering the pods. Using the readings they had taken during their initial exploration, Alex and Rachel identified key components of the system. The central glowing structure appeared to function as a kind of generator, emitting specific wavelengths of light and heat that sustained the alien beings. However, the connections between the generator and the pods were deteriorating. It's causing fluctuations in the energy output. We need to find a way to reinforce those connections, Rachel said, pointing to a schematic on her tablet. If we can stabilize the flow of energy, it might buy us enough time to figure out how to repair the system fully. But how?
Alex asked.
We don't have access to materials that match their technology. What if we use what we have? Emily chimed in, joining the discussion. We brought plenty of equipment for mining and drilling. Maybe we can adapt some of it to interface with their system. It was a risky idea, but it was the best they had. Over the next few hours, the team brainstormed ways to modify their tools to interact with the alien technology. Alex focused on designing a makeshift adapter using spare parts from the rover, while Rachel and Emily worked on calibrating the equipment to emit the correct wavelengths of energy. The process was painstaking, requiring constant adjustments and recalibrations. But slowly, a prototype began to take shape. By the time they finished, the sunlit side of the moon had given way to darkness once again. The team suited up and loaded. The rover with their modified gear, preparing for another trip to the cavern. This time they brought additional lighting rigs and reinforced climbing equipment. Determined to be better prepared for whatever awaited them below when they arrived. At the entrance to the cavern, the tension was palpable. The memory of the shadowy movements from their last visit lingered in everyone's minds, casting a pall of unease over the group. Alex led the way, his headlamp cutting through the gloom as they descended into the depths. The air felt colder than before, and the faint hum of energy emanating from the central structure seemed weaker. Almost strained as they approached the chamber containing the crystalline pods, Alex noticed something alarming. Several of the pods near the edges of the room had gone completely dark, their occupants motionless within. A quick scan revealed that the energy connections to those pods had failed entirely, leaving the beings inside lifeless. Alex clenched his fists, anger and sadness warring within him. They were running out of time. "Let's get to work," he said, his voice tight with determination. The team sprang into action, setting up their equipment and connecting it to the failing system. Rachel monitored the energy levels closely, making minute adjustments to ensure the wavelengths matched those required by the pods. Emily assisted Alex in securing the adapters to the existing infrastructure, their hands moving quickly despite the bulky gloves of their suits. For a while, everything seemed to be going according to plan. The energy readings stabilized, and the glow from the central structure brightened slightly, casting a warm light across the chamber. As the surviving pods flickered back to life, their occupants stirring faintly within. Relief washed over the team, tempered only by the knowledge that this was merely a temporary fix. But then, without warning, the ground beneath them trembled violently. Rocks tumbled from the ceiling, forcing the team to scramble for cover. The tremors subsided after a few seconds, but the damage was done. One of the adapters had been dislodged, severing the connection to a cluster of pods. Alex cursed under, his breath rushing to reconnect the device. But the instability of the cavern made it difficult to maintain his footing, and then the shadows returned. At first, they were subtle flickers at the edge of their vision, easily dismissed as tricks of the light. But soon, the movements became more pronounced, darting between the rows of pods with unnatural speed. Whatever was watching them had grown bolder, emboldened perhaps by the chaos caused by the quake. "Everyone stay alert," Alex shouted, his voice echoing through the cavern. He turned his headlamp toward the source of the movement, illuminating a pair of glowing eyes staring back at him from the darkness. The creature stepped forward cautiously, its form shifting and rippling like smoke given shape. It was unlike anything Alex had ever seen, Alan spindly, with elongated limbs and translucent skin that shimmered faintly in the light. The rest of the team froze, their breaths catching in their throats. For a moment no one moved, locked in a silent standoff with the mysterious being. Then, to everyone's surprise, it raised one of its arms, pointing toward the central structure. Its gesture was deliberate, almost communicative. "It wants us to follow it," Rachel whispered, her voice trembling. "Are you sure?" Alex asked, his grip tightening on the tool in his hand. "I think so," Rachel replied. "It hasn't attacked us yet. Maybe it's trying to show us something." Against his better judgment, Alex decided to trust her instincts. He signaled for the team to stay close as they followed the creature deeper into the cavern. It moved gracefully, gliding over the uneven terrain with ease, leading them to a narrow passage hidden behind a cluster of rocks. The passage sloped downward, descending even farther into the bowels of the moon. The air grew colder as they ventured deeper, and the walls of the tunnel began to glow faintly, illuminated by veins of phosphorescent crystal embedded in the stone. The creature paused at the end of the passage, gesturing toward a massive door carved into the rock. Intricate symbols covered its surface, pulsing softly with a golden light. Part 4, the chamber was unlike anything Alex had ever seen. The walls shimmered with veins of glowing crystal, casting a warm, golden light that filled the room. The hum of the machinery was steady and rhythmic, almost soothing, but there was an undercurrent of tension in the air, like the calm before a storm. At the center of the chamber stood the pedestal, its surface smooth and polished, reflecting the light from the orb resting on top. The orb itself pulsed softly, as if alive, its glow shifting between hues of amber and pale blue dot. Alex approached cautiously, his boots crunching lightly against the stone floor. He could feel the weight of everyone's eyes on him, their breaths shallow, intense. Rachel stayed close behind, her camera clicking steadily as she documented every detail. The alien creature lingered near the entrance, its glowing eyes fixed on them, watching silently. Its presence was both unnerving and oddly reassuring, as though it had brought them here for a reason. "This is incredible," Rachel whispered, her voice barely audible over the hum of the machinery. "It's like the heart of their civilization." "What's left of it?" Alex replied, his tone subdued. He reached out hesitantly toward the orb, his gloved hand hovering just above its surface. The warmth radiating from it was subtle, but unmistakable, like the faint heat of sunlight on a cool day. "Do you think this controls the energy system?" "It has to," Rachel said, stepping closer. "Everything we've seen so far points to this being the source, the generator, the pods, even the carvings. It all connects back to this." Before Alex could respond, the orb flared brightly, startling the entire team. For a moment, the light was almost blinding, forcing them to shield their eyes. When the glow dimmed, Alex noticed something new. Symbols etched into the pedestal, faintly illuminated by the orb's light. They were similar to the ones they'd seen on the cavern walls, but more intricate, forming patterns that seemed to shift and rearrange themselves as he stared at them. "What are those?" Emily asked, her voice tinged with both awe and apprehension. "I don't know," Alex admitted, crouching down to examine the markings more closely. "But they look like instructions or maybe a warning." Rachel knelt beside him, her tablet, already scanning the symbols. "If we can decode these, it might tell us how to stabilize the system or even repair it completely." As she worked, Daniel stepped forward, his expression skeptical. "Are we sure this is a good idea?" "With something like this could make things worse. We're not messing with anything yet," Alex shot back, his frustration bubbling to the surface. "We're trying to understand it. If we don't figure out how this works, those beings out there will die. Is that what you want?" Daniel didn't answer immediately. Instead, he crossed his arms over his chest, his jaw tightening. "Just saying we need to be careful. You don't know what kind of consequences this could have for them, or for us." "He's right," Emily interjected, her voice calm but firm. "But doing nothing isn't an option either. If we can save them even temporarily, it's worth the risk." The debate simmered for a moment longer, but eventually the team agreed to proceed cautiously. While Rachel continued decoding the symbols, Alex and Emily focused on examining the machinery surrounding the pedestal. It was unlike any technology they had encountered before, seamless, organic-looking panels that seemed to pulse with energy. Every touch sent ripples across the surface, as though the material responded to their presence. "This is insane," Emily muttered, running her gloved fingers over one of the panels. "It's like it's alive." "Might be," Alex replied, his eyes narrowing as he studied the patterns of light flowing through the system. "Their technology seems to blend biology and engineering. Maybe this whole setup is part machine, part organism." Rachel looked up from her tablet, her expression thoughtful. That would explain why it's failing. If it's partially biological, it might degrade over time without proper maintenance. And if that's true, simply stabilizing the energy flow won't fix the problem permanently, Alex added. We'll need to find a way to repair or replace the biological components. Realization hung heavy in the air. Repairing advanced alien technology was hard enough. Repairing something that straddled the line between machine and life form felt nearly impossible. But giving up wasn't an option, not when lives were at stake. As the hours passed, the team made slow but steady progress. Rachel managed to decipher fragments of the symbols, piecing together a rudimentary understanding of the system's function. The orb, she explained, acted as a core nexus of energy that powered not only the pods, but also other systems throughout the cavern. However, the connections between the core and the rest of the network were deteriorating. It's causing the energy to leak and destabilize. We need to reinforce the pathways, Rachel said, pointing to a series of conduits branching off from the pedestal. If we can seal the leaks, we might be able to restore the flow of energy. But how do we do that? Emily asked. We don't have materials that match their tech. We adapt, Alex replied, his mind racing. We use what we brought with us: sealants, adhesives, whatever we can modify to fit. With renewed determination, the team sprang into action. Alex and Emily focused on patching the conduits, using tools and materials scavenged from their equipment. Rachel monitored the energy levels, making adjustments to ensure the flow remained stable. The alien creature remained near the entrance. Observing their efforts with an intensity that bordered on curiosity, despite their best efforts, the process was fraught with challenges. Conduits were delicate, and even the slightest misstep threatened to damage them further. Several times, Alex had to stop and recalibrate their approach, tweaking the makeshift repairs until they held. The tension in the room was palpable, each small victory bringing a mix of relief and exhaustion. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the last conduit was sealed. The hum of the machinery grew louder, steadier, as the energy levels stabilized. The golden light filling the chamber brightened slightly, casting long shadows across the walls. For the first time since they'd entered the cavern, Alex allowed himself to breathe a little easier. We did it, Rachel said, her voice trembling with emotion, at least for now. Don't celebrate too soon, Daniel cautioned, his tone measured but wary. This is only a temporary fix. The system is still breaking down. He's right, Alex admitted, turning to face the group. But this buys us time to figure out a permanent solution. As the team began packing up their gear, the alien creature moved closer to the pedestal, its gaze fixed on the glowing orb. It raised one of its slender arms, touching the surface gently. To everyone's surprise, the orb flared again, this time sending waves of light cascading outward. The light enveloped the chamber, bathing the team in warmth and illuminating every corner with dazzling clarity. For a brief moment, Alex felt a strange sense of connection, a fleeting awareness of something vast and ancient, stretching far beyond the confines of the cavern. Then, as quickly as it had come, the sensation faded, leaving him disoriented but strangely hopeful. What just happened? Emily asked, her voice hushed. I don't know, Alex replied, shaking his head, but I think it was trying to communicate. Rachel pressed, lowering her camera. That's the question, Alex said, his eyes narrowing as he studied the creature. Maybe gratitude, or maybe a message. The creature lingered for a moment longer, then turned and glided back toward the passage leading out of the chamber. Without hesitation, Alex followed, signaling for the others to do the same. Whatever the creature wanted to show them next, they couldn't afford to ignore it. Back in the main cavern, the effects of their repairs were already visible. The crystalline pods glowed brighter, their occupants stirring faintly within. Some of the beings opened their eyes, their translucent forms shimmering with renewed vitality. Alex felt a lump rise in his throat as he watched them. These creatures weren't just surviving, they were awakening, but the sense of accomplishment was short-lived. As the team prepared to leave the cavern, a sudden noise echoed through the chamber below. mechanical worry that grew louder with each passing second. Alex spun around, his heart pounding as he scanned the area. The sound was coming from the central structure, where the glowing core had begun to flicker erratically. "What's happening?" Rachel shouted, her voice tinged with panic. "I don't know," Alex yelled back, rushing toward the structure. The ground beneath them trembled slightly, and the light from the core dimmed, plunging the cavern into shadow. Then, without warning, the core surged violently, sending a shockwave rippling through the chamber. Rocks tumbled from the ceiling, and the air grew thick with dust. The team scrambled for cover, their shouts drowned out by the deafening roar of collapsing stone. When the chaos finally subsided, Alex looked up, his chest heaving with exertion. Through the haze of dust and debris, he saw the alien creature standing near the edge of the chamber, its glowing eyes locked onto him. It raised its arm once more, gesturing urgently toward the exit. "Let's go," Alex shouted, grabbing Rachel's hand and pulling her to her feet. The rest of the team followed, stumbling over loose rocks as they made their way toward the passage. Behind them, the central structure groaned ominously, its light flickering. Part 5. The sunlit side of the moon stretched endlessly before them, its barren surface bathed in pale light. Alex stood near the rover, his helmet reflecting the glow of the Earth hanging low on the horizon. Silence outside was deafening, broken only by the faint hum of their equipment and the occasional crunch of boots against the regolith. Despite the calm exterior, tension simmered beneath the surface. The collapse of the central structure had left the team shaken, their minds racing with questions they couldn't yet answer. Rachel leaned against the rover, arms crossed tightly over her chest. Her face was pale, her expression a mix of exhaustion and unease. "We barely made it out," she said finally, her voice trembling. "If that creature hadn't led us to safety." "We don't know why it helped us," Alex interrupted, his tone measured but firm. "But we owe it something gratitude, at least." "Gratitude won't fix what's happening down there," Daniel muttered, pacing back and forth. His tall frame cast long shadows across the ground as he moved. "That core was the heart of their system. Without it, those beings are as good as dead." "They're not dead yet," Alex shot back, his frustration evident. "We stabilized the energy flow before the collapse. That has to count for something. But for how long?" Emily chimed in, her voice soft but steady. She adjusted the strap of her toolkit, her hands fidgeting nervously. "The repairs we made were temporary. If we don't find a way to replace the core or rebuild, it will lose them all." Alex clenched his jaw, knowing she was right. The makeshift fixes they had implemented in the cavern were holding for now, but the system was still deteriorating. The alien technology was far beyond anything humanity had encountered, blending organic and mechanical elements in ways that defied conventional understanding. Repairing it required more than ingenuity, required insight into the aliens' way of life, their needs, and their limitations. As the team debated their next steps, Alex found his thoughts drifting back to the glowing orb and the strange connection he had felt when it flared. There had been something almost alive about it, as if it were more than just a machine. He couldn't shake the feeling that the orband, perhaps the entire system, was sentient in some way, capable of thought or emotion. If that was true, then their actions might have consequences they couldn't predict. "We need to focus on what we can control," Rachel said, breaking the silence. "We've got data from the symbols and scans of the machinery. Let's go through everything again, piece by piece. Maybe we missed something." It was a logical suggestion, one that everyone agreed on despite their differences. Back at the base camp, the team gathered around the main table, spreading out their notes and equipment. Rachel plugged her tablet into the shared server, projecting images of the symbols onto the wall. Alex studied them carefully, tracing the patterns with his finger as he tried to decipher their meaning. Each symbol seemed to represent a concept energy, life connection, but the relationships between them were complex, layered like a puzzle waiting to be solved. Meanwhile, Emily worked on analyzing the scans of the machinery, searching for clues about its design and function. The panels they had touched earlier appeared to respond to external stimuli, suggesting they were designed to interact with users. But whether those users were meant to be human or something else entirely remained unclear. Hours passed as the team pored over the information, their discussions growing increasingly animated. At one point, Alex noticed Daniel lingering near the edge of the room, his arms crossed and his brow furrowed. "You've been quiet," Alex said, gesturing for him to join the group. "What's on your mind?" Daniel hesitated, glancing at the others before speaking. "I keep thinking about the risks. We've already seen what happens when things go wrong, the tremors, the collapse. What if trying to fix this makes it worse? What if we accidentally trigger another disaster?" "A valid concern," Alex admitted, nodding slowly. "But doing nothing guarantees failure. If we want to help those beings, if we want to understand them, we have to take the chance." "And what if helping them puts us in danger?" Daniel pressed, his voice rising slightly. "We're talking about an alien species, Alex. Their priorities might not align with ours. What if they see us as a threat or worse, as tools to exploit?" The room fell silent as his words sank in. It was a sobering thought, one that none of them could ignore. Humanity's history was filled with examples of well-intentioned actions gone awry, often because people failed to consider the broader implications of their decisions. Could the same happen here? Rachel broke the silence, her tone thoughtful, but resolute. "We can't let fear stop us from doing the right thing. Yes, there are risks. But if we approach this carefully, if we prioritize understanding over action, we might find a way to coexist." Words struck a chord with the group, easing some of the tension in the air. They decided to focus on two objectives. First, to decode as much of the alien language as possible, hoping to uncover instructions or warnings that could guide their efforts. And second, to explore alternative methods of stabilizing the energy system using materials available to them. By the end of the day, they had made modest progress. Rachel identified several key phrases in the symbols, including references to cycles and balance. These terms suggested that the system relied on a delicate equilibrium, one that had been disrupted by the collapse. Armed with this knowledge, Alex and Emily began brainstorming ways to replicate the balance artificially. Their breakthrough came unexpectedly late that night. While reviewing the scans of the machinery, Emily noticed something unusual: a series of conduits embedded in the walls of the cavern that hadn't been visible during their initial exploration. These conduits appeared to connect the central structure to other parts of the underground network, forming a web-like pattern that extended far beyond the chamber they had visited. What if these conduits are part of a backup system? Emily suggested, pointing to the schematic on her screen. Maybe they were designed to reroute energy in case of a failure. "It's worth investigating," Alex replied, his eyes lighting up with renewed hope. "If we can activate them, we might be able to bypass the damaged sections and restore power to the pods." The idea sparked a flurry of activity. The team spent the next few hours preparing for another trip to the cavern, gathering supplies, and modifying their equipment to interface with the alien conduits. This time, they brought additional lighting rigs and reinforced climbing gear, determined to avoid a repeat of the previous collapse. When they arrived at the entrance to the cavern, the atmosphere was tense but focused. The memory of the collapsing structure loomed large in everyone's minds, casting a shadow over their efforts. Alex led the way, his headlamp cutting through the darkness as they descended into the depths. The air felt colder than before, and the faint hum of energy emanating from the remaining machinery seemed weaker, almost strained. As they approached the main chamber, Alex noticed something alarming. Several of the crystalline pods near the edges of the room had begun to dim once again, their occupants slipping back toward dormancy. A quick scan revealed that the energy levels were dropping rapidly, threatening to undo the repairs they had made earlier. "We need to hurry," Alex said urgently, signaling for the team to spread out and locate the conduits. Rachel and Emily moved quickly, their headlamps sweeping across the walls as they searched for signs of the hidden pathways. Meanwhile, Alex focused on setting up a portable generator they had brought along, hoping to provide a temporary boost to the failing system. After several minutes of frantic searching, Rachel spotted the first conduit, narrow opening, partially obscured by fallen debris. "Over here," she called out, waving the others over. Together, they cleared the rubble, revealing a smooth, metallic surface that pulsed faintly with light. Using tools adapted from their mining equipment, the team worked to interface with the conduit. The process was slow and painstaking, requiring precise adjustments to match the alien technology. Every misstep sent ripples of instability through the system, forcing them to recalibrate their approach repeatedly. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the conduit flared brightly, sending waves of energy surging through the network. The golden light filling the chamber brightened noticeably, bathing the crystalline pods in warmth and vitality. One by one, the beings inside stirred, their translucent forms shimmering with renewed life. A wave of relief washed over the team as they watched the transformation unfold. For the first time since they'd arrived on the moon, they allowed themselves to believe that their efforts might actually make a difference. But the moment of triumph was short-lived. From the shadows, the alien creature emerged once again, its glowing eyes fixed on Alex. It moved closer, its spindly limbs rippling with fluid grace. Then, without warning, it reached out, touching Alex's arm lightly. The contact sent a jolt of energy coursing through him, sharp but not painful. Images flooded his mind, scenes of a thriving civilization, vibrant and alive, followed by visions of devastation and despair. When the images faded, Alex stumbled backward, his breath coming in shallow gasps. Rachel rushed to his side, steadying him as he regained his footing. "Are you okay?" she asked, her voice filled with concern. Part 6. The journey back to the base camp felt longer than usual, the weight of what they had seen and experienced pressing heavily on the team. Alex sat in silence, his mind replaying the images the alien creature had shown him. The vibrant world it had depicted, full of light, heat, and life, was a stark contrast to the desolate caverns they now inhabited. It was clear that this species had once thrived, their civilization advanced and harmonious. But something had gone terribly wrong. Plunging them into darkness and despair, Rachel noticed Alex's distant expression as she drove the rover. "You're thinking about what it showed you," she said softly, her voice cutting through the quiet hum of the vehicle. Alex nodded, leaning forward slightly. "It wasn't just a vision, it was a message. They didn't fail because of laziness or carelessness. Something catastrophic happened, something beyond their control." "Like what?" Emily asked from the back seat, her tone curious, but cautious. She held her tablet in her lap, still analyzing data from the conduits they had activated earlier. "I don't know," Alex admitted. "But whatever it was, it wiped out their ability to produce light and heat. Those things were essential for their survival, and without them, they couldn't adapt fast enough." Daniel, who had been silent for most of the ride, finally spoke up. "Maybe that's why they're so desperate for us to help. If we can restore their energy system, we might give them a second chance. But at what cost?" Rachel countered, glancing at Daniel through the rearview mirror. "We've already seen how fragile their technology is. One wrong move could destroy everything." "It's not just about the tech," Alex interjected, his voice firm. "It's about trust. That creature didn't have to show me anything. It trusted me, or at least it wanted to communicate. We owe them the same respect." By the time they reached the base camp, the sunlit side of the moon had begun to fade. Casting long shadows across the barren landscape, the team unloaded their gear and gathered inside the main dome, where the atmosphere was tense but focused. Everyone knew they were running out of time. The repairs they had made in the cavern were temporary, and the alien beings' lifelines were still precarious. "We need to figure out how to stabilize the conduits permanently," Alex said, pacing back and forth as he spoke. "That's our priority." "And how do we do that?" Daniel asked, crossing his arms over his chest. The skepticism was evident, but there was also a flicker of curiosity in his eyes. "We start by understanding their needs," Rachel replied, pulling up the scans of the crystalline pods on her tablet. "These beings require specific wavelengths of light and heat to survive. If we can replicate those conditions artificially, we might be able to sustain them until we find a way to repair the core." Emily nodded, adding, "We could modify some of our equipment to emit the right frequencies. It won't be perfect, but it might buy us more time." As the discussion continued, Alex found himself drawn back to the images the alien creature had shared with him. He couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to its message than just a plea for help. The scenes of devastation had been haunting, cities crumbling, skies darkening, and entire populations vanishing into stasis. But there had been something else too, something almost hopeful buried beneath the tragedy. What if they're not just asking for help with their survival? Alex mused aloud, stopping mid-stride. What if they're trying to teach us something? The room fell silent as everyone turned to look at him. Rachel tilted her head slightly, her brow furrowing. "Teach us what?" "I'm not sure yet," Alex admitted. "But think about it. Their collapse wasn't caused by war or greed, was an environmental disaster. They lost their light and heat because they relied too heavily on artificial systems. Maybe they're warning us about the dangers of overconsumption." Rachel's eyes widened as the implications sank in. If that's true, then helping them isn't just about saving their species, it's about learning from their mistakes. Daniel let out a low whistle, shaking his head. "Wow, that's a big leap. You're saying these aliens are trying to send humanity a message about sustainability?" "It makes sense," Emily chimed in, her voice thoughtful. "Their technology blends biology and engineering perfectly. It's sustainable by design, or at least it used to be. Maybe they want to share that knowledge with us." The idea sparked a new wave of energy within the group. For the first time, they began to see their mission not just as an act of rescue, but as an opportunity to bridge to worlds. If they could decode the principles behind the aliens' energy system, they might unlock innovations that could benefit Earth as well. With renewed determination, the team dove back into their work.
"Alex!"
And Emily focused on modifying the portable generator they had brought along, tweaking its output to match the wavelengths required by the alien beings. Rachel and Daniel worked together to refine their understanding of the symbols etched into the cavern walls, searching for clues about the optimal conditions needed to sustain the pods. Hours passed in a blur of activity, contributing their skills to the effort. Progress was slow but steady, and by the early hours of the lunar morning, they had constructed a prototype device capable of emitting the necessary frequencies. It wasn't elegant, a patchwork of wires, lenses, and modified components, but it worked. "We'll need to test it in the cavern," Alex said, examining the device closely. "If it holds up under real-world conditions, we might be able to scale it up." "No pressure, then," Daniel muttered dryly, earning a small laugh from the others. When they returned to the cavern, the golden light from the conduits had dimmed, noticeably casting long shadows across the chamber. The crystalline pods glowed faintly, their occupants stirring weakly within. Alex set up the device near the central structure, calibrating it carefully to ensure the energy output matched the requirements. As the device powered on, soft hum filled the air, accompanied by a warm amber glow that spread steadily throughout the chamber. The pods brightened almost immediately, their surfaces shimmering with renewed vitality. Several of the beings inside opened their eyes, their translucent forms glowing faintly in response to the influx of energy. "It's working," Rachel whispered, her voice filled with awe. She snapped photos rapidly, documenting the transformation. This could actually work. But even as the team celebrated their success, the alien creature reappeared, stepping out of the shadows with deliberate movements. Its glowing eyes fixed on Alex, and it raised one of its slender arms, gesturing toward the device. "What does it want?" Emily asked, her voice tinged with apprehension. "I think it wants us to follow it again," Alex replied, his gaze locked on the creature. "Maybe it has something to show us." Without waiting for consensus, Alex grabbed his toolkit and followed the creature deeper into the cavern. The others hesitated briefly before joining him, their footsteps echoing softly against the rocky walls. The passage led them to a previously unexplored section of the underground network, a smaller chamber filled with intricate carvings and glowing panels embedded in the stone. At the center of the room stood another pedestal, similar to the one they had encountered earlier. Resting atop it was a smaller orb, its surface pulsing faintly with light. The creature touched the orb gently, causing it to flare brightly. Waves of energy radiated outward, illuminating the carvings and revealing detailed depictions of the alien's history. "These aren't just warnings," Rachel said, her voice trembling with excitement. "They're instructions for building sustainable systems." Alex stepped closer, studying the carvings intently. "They're showing us how to create energy sources that won't collapse like theirs did. This is their gift to us." For a moment, no one spoke. The realization was overwhelming. The aliens weren't just victims, they were teachers, offering humanity a chance to avoid the same mistakes that had doomed their own civilization. "We need to document everything," Alex said finally, his voice filled with resolve. "Every symbol, every diagram. This knowledge could change everything for them and for us." As the team got to work, the alien creature lingered nearby, its presence a constant reminder of the trust they had earned. Outside, the lunar landscape stretched endlessly, cold and desolate. But within the cavern, a spark of hope had been reignited. Promise of renewal, forged in the bond between two vastly different species. Part 7, the chamber was alive with light, its walls glowing softly as the alien orb pulsed with energy. Alex stood near the pedestal, his eyes scanning the intricate carvings that covered every surface. Each symbol seemed to tell a story of creation, of balance, and ultimately of collapse. It was overwhelming. It's like piecing together fragments of an ancient puzzle that held the key to two civilizations' futures. Rachel moved methodically, the camera clicking steadily as she documented each carving in detail. Her movements were precise, almost reverent, as though she understood the gravity of what they were uncovering. "This is incredible," she murmured, pausing to zoom in on a particularly intricate diagram. "These aren't just instructions, they're principles. Philosophy for living sustainably." Emily knelt beside one of the panels, running her gloved fingers over its smooth surface. The material responded to her touch, rippling faintly as if acknowledging her presence. "It's like it's teaching us how to live alongside nature instead of trying to control it," she said, her voice filled with wonder. "Their technology isn't just advanced, it's harmonious." Daniel lingered near the entrance, his arms crossed over his chest. He had been quieter than usual since entering the chamber, his skepticism tempered by the undeniable evidence before him. "If this is true," he said finally, breaking the silence, "then why did their system fail? If they were so focused on sustainability, how did they end up here?" Alex turned to face him, his expression thoughtful. Maybe sustainability wasn't the problem. Maybe it was something else, something they couldn't have predicted. "Like what?" Daniel pressed, stepping closer. "Natural disasters, resource depletion, or maybe external forces," Rachel suggested, lowering her camera. "We've seen signs of seismic activity in the caverns. What if their world changed too quickly for them to adapt?" Possibility hung in the air, heavy and unresolved. Whatever had caused the aliens' downfall, it was clear that their society had been built on principles humanity could learn from. If only they could decipher the message in time. As the team worked, the alien creature remained nearby, its glowing eyes fixed on them with an intensity that bordered on curiosity. Occasionally, it would gesture toward specific carvings or panels as though guiding their attention. When Alex approached it cautiously, the creature extended one of its slender arms, touching the orb once more. This time, the flare of light was softer, almost inviting. "What do you think it wants?" Emily asked, glancing between Alex and the creature. "I think it's trying to help us understand," Alex replied, his voice steady but tinged with awe. "It's showing us the way." With renewed focus, the team redoubled their efforts. Rachel worked tirelessly to translate the symbols, cross-referencing them with the data they had collected earlier. Alex and Emily collaborated on interpreting the diagrams, sketching rough blueprints for potential adaptations of the alien technology. Daniel, despite his initial reservations, joined in, offering practical insights into how the designs might be implemented using Earth-based materials. Hours passed in a blur of activity, the hum of the orb providing a steady backdrop to their work. By the time they paused to rest, they had made significant progress. The carvings revealed a sophisticated approach to energy generation, one that relied on natural cycles rather than artificial constructs. The aliens had harnessed geothermal energy, solar radiation, and even the moon's own gravitational forces to create a self-sustaining system. But when their primary source of light and heat failed, the entire network collapsed. "This changes everything," Alex said, leaning back against the pedestal. His voice was hoarse from hours of discussion, but his eyes sparkled with determination. "If we can adapt their methods, we might not just save them, we might find a way to prevent similar disasters on Earth." "It's not going to be easy," Rachel cautioned, her tone measured but hopeful. "Replicating their technology will take time and resources we don't have here." "But we can start," Emily added, holding up her sketches. "Even small-scale adaptations could make a difference for them and for us." The realization ignited a spark of hope within the group. For the first time since arriving on the moon, they felt like they were working towards something greater than survival. They weren't just repairing a broken system. They were building a bridge between two worlds, learning from the past to shape the future as they prepared to leave the chamber. The alien creature stepped forward, its movements deliberate and graceful. It raised both arms, gesturing toward the exit before turning to look at Alex. Its glowing eyes seemed to convey a sense of urgency, as though reminding them that time was running out. "We need to move faster," Alex said, his voice firm. "Every second counts." Back at the main cavern, the team set to work implementing their newfound knowledge. Using the portable generator as a base, they began modifying its components to incorporate principles from the alien designs.
Alex
Focused on calibrating the energy output, ensuring it matched the wavelengths required by the crystalline pods. Rachel monitored the beings' responses, noting subtle changes in their behavior as the adjustments took effect. Emily and Daniel worked together to reinforce the connections between the conduits, stabilizing the flow of energy throughout the network. The process was painstaking, requiring constant recalibration and troubleshooting. Several times, the system faltered, forcing the team to scramble for solutions. But each setback brought new insights, deepening their understanding of the alien technology. Slowly but surely, the golden light filling the chamber grew brighter, casting long shadows across the walls by the time they completed the modifications. The crystalline pods were glowing steadily, their occupants stirring with renewed vitality. Some of the beings opened their eyes fully, gazing around the chamber with expressions that seemed almost grateful. Alex felt a lump rise in his throat as he watched them. These creatures weren't just surviving, they were awakening. But the alien creature wasn't done yet. As the team packed up their gear, it approached Alex once again, its movement slow and deliberate. This time, it didn't stop at the edge of the chamber. Instead, it reached out, touching the surface of one of the pods. The pod flared brightly, and a moment later, the being inside emerged. Stepping out into the chamber with fluid grace, the sight took everyone's breath away. The alien being stood tall and slender, its translucent skin shimmering faintly in the light. Its eyes glowed with the same intensity as the creature that had guided them, but there was something different about it, a sense of authority, of purpose. "It's their leader," Rachel whispered, her voice trembling with awe. The being turned to face Alex, tilting its head slightly as though studying him. Then, without warning, it placed a hand on his shoulder. A surge of warmth spread through Alex's body, accompanied by a flood of scenes of cooperation, of humans and aliens working side by side to rebuild what had been lost. When the vision faded, Alex staggered backward, steadied by Rachel. The alien leader stepped back, its gaze shifting to the others. Its movements were deliberate, almost communicative, as though conveying a message of unity and trust. "They're thanking us," Alex said finally, his voice thick with emotion, "and asking for our help, not just to save them, but to learn." From them, the room fell silent as the weight of the moment settled over the team. They had come to the moon seeking answers, but what they had found was far greater than any of them could have imagined. Humanity wasn't alone in the universe, and neither were the aliens. Together, they had the chance to forge a new path. One built on mutual respect and shared knowledge, as they prepared to leave the cavern. The alien leader and the creature that had guided them lingered near the entrance, watching silently as the humans climbed aboard the rover. The journey back to the base camp felt surreal, the barren lunar landscape stretching endlessly before them. But for the first time, it didn't feel desolate. It felt full of possibility. When they arrived, the sunlit side of the moon was beginning to fade, casting long shadows across the horizon. Alex stood outside the dome, gazing up at the Earth hanging low in the sky. Its pale blue glow reminded him of home and of the responsibility they now carried. "We've got a lot of work ahead of us," he said finally, turning to face the others. "But if we can bring this knowledge back to Earth, we might just change the course of history for both our species." Rachel nodded, her expression resolute. "Then let's get started." Why? And with that, the team stepped inside, ready to begin the next chapter of their journey, a mission that transcended borders, species, and even worlds.